Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Ford Transit T250, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the ETBCL kit, which is going to give you a 7-way connector as well as a 4-way flat connector on the back of your Transit. So the whole purpose of this kit is to provide you with not only a 7-way round connector, but also a 4-way flat connector. So it's really convenient. These are the most common types of trailer hookups. And with these Transits being used primarily for work, at least the ones that we get in the shop, it's going to be great to have both these options. That way, regardless of what type of trailer you hook up to, you're going to be able to plug it into the back of your Transit. Now, I will say, a lot of these Transits do come in the shop here and they want brake controllers installed. And if you want to use a traditional style brake controller, one that mounts in the dash, you will need the full ETBCL kit to get that done. But there's some pretty cool things out now, specifically the Kurt Echo. It's a wireless brake controller, and all it needs is power. And this kit is going to give us that. Since we have our turn signals, our tail lights, our brake lights, but since we run power from the battery to here, it also gives us that 12-volt signal. So here is this Kurt Echo that I mentioned, and these are becoming more and more popular. It's actually wireless, so you're going to be able to control this from your mobile device, and all that technology has really come a long way. These work very well, and so all you're going to have to do, if you want to go this route, is plug it into your 7-way, and then plug your trailer into the end of it. So it's super simple and way less invasive than your traditional style brake controller, especially if you have multiple tow vehicles. Pull this out, switch them around, and not be restricted to just one vehicle. There is something I do want to mention, and for this kit to actually work, you are going to need existing 4-pole flat wiring. So in our case, our customer today put on the Takancha 4-way wiring. It's probably my choice as well. I'm a big fan of those. And this is going to plug in to that existing 4-pole wiring, and then you're just going to have to run your power wire up to the battery, and that's going to allow you to have that 12-volt output here. The kit does come included with this bracket here, where your 7-way connector itself mounts to, which is really convenient. But I will say, depending on what type of hitch you have, you may have to use an additional bracket. Like in our case here, the hitch doesn't have a bracket already attached to it. It's not really a big deal. I just used a no drill long bracket that connects to the hitch. That way we can connect this one to it, and everything's easy to get to and nice and secure. So at the end of the day, this is a really convenient way to not only have your 7-way round type trailer connector, but also your 4-way flat connector. Not to mention too, it also gives you that ability to use a wireless type brake controller in the future if that's what you need to do. So kind of a good all-around package there. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad. As I mentioned, the 4-way flat connector just plugs into your existing wiring, and then you're going to have that one power wire you need to run up to the hood. So that probably takes the most amount of time, but everything's pretty straightforward. It's really nothing too confusing about it. But with that being said, why don't we go ahead and hook this up together now. So to begin our installation, I went ahead and mounted up our bracket here. So the kit does come with this one where our 7-way connects, but it doesn't come with this one here that actually goes to the hitch. But from there, we can take our 7-way connector harness and mount it to these said brackets. So I'll feed all of our wires through. And what you're going to do is just take a bolt, push it all the way through. And then on the back side, you can take a flat washer, a split lock washer, and a nut. So I'm going to get all 4 corners hand tight, and then I can come back and snug them all down. Once you have all of them in there, hand tight, you can take a 3/8 wrench, hold the back of the nut, and a Phillips head screwdriver, and snug everything down. Now what we can do is grab our 4-way flat connector here, and I'm going to apply some dielectric grease to the terminals. I suggest doing that and just coat those real good. This is going to plug in to our existing 4-pole wiring. Just plug those two in together. So what I went ahead and did was just use some electrical tape and tape these two connectors together. Then I took a zip tie and zip tied them as well. That way there's no chance of this accidentally becoming unplugged. And while I was doing that, I also taped up the blue and yellow wire here. We're not going to be using those, so I just taped them up real good and zip tied them out of the way for now. That being said, now we can focus on our black wire here. Now this is going to get connected to a power wire. What I'm going to do is remove this butt connector. This one will work just fine, but I prefer the heat shrink type butt connectors and seal up and just offer us a little more protection. If you'd rather use these, you can grab them here at eTrailer. I'll strip back the insulation, give it a good twist. Take our butt connector, slide that over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. And then this wire here, I just got it draped up over our hitch. This is the one that's going to come with your kit. This is going to be the power wire that runs from here to our engine compartment. So we're going to hook that up while we're at it. The same way. Put it into the other end of our butt connector and crimp it down. And again, since this is a heat shrink type connector, I'm going to grab my heat gun and seal up the ends. So what I went in and did is just put some electrical tape over our butt connector there for a little extra protection. And then all these slack wires I kind of just bundled up, secured them up out of the way. And now that's going to leave us with this white wire here with the pre-attached ring terminal. That's going to need to be grounded to the body of our vehicle. Turns out right here, nice thick metal, and that'll provide us with a great ground. So I'm going to take a self-tapping screw and secure that to the body of our vehicle. Now what we can do is take that power wire and route it from the back here up into the engine compartment. So I went ahead and did that. That's the path that I took. Just ran it along through here. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure to avoid any hot or moving parts. So it comes up and over here. You want to make sure to use some zip ties every now and again to keep it secure. And right here, it just runs along the side of our fuel tank. You can see our black wire there. Just runs behind those straps and continues towards the front. All the way along through here. So as you can see along the side of our frame rail here, our wiring just runs along it. So it's up in there, and here in the front, when we have this opening here, you can see it. And then it's going to go up into the engine compartment. Now the way to get it up there, or an easy way, is to use what's called a fish wire. You can take a coat hanger, a piece of tubing, something like that, open up the hood, drop that tubing or coat hanger down through to the bottom side. You can tape that power wire to it, go back up top, pull on the pull wire, and it'll bring our power wire right to where you need it to be. So now underneath the hood, here's where our power wire comes up. For now, we're just going to kind of let it hang out, and we need to find a spot that we can mount up our breaker. So really don't have a ton of room to work here, what I think I'm going to do is right here we have a small metal bracket there, and it looks like nothing's connected to it. So I'm going to take our breaker and just mount it to that. Looks like it'll be big enough. You may have to kind of mount it at an angle, but that's no big deal. So I get that lined up. And I'm going to secure it using the provided self-tapping screws. So what I went ahead and did is the power wire here, I ran it over to our breaker and cut it to length, and then I crimped on a small ring terminal, just like how we did the butt connector. And at this point we can go ahead and remove the nuts here off the studs. You want to be careful when you're doing this because these kind of pop off at the very end almost, and you can drop them pretty easy, so just take your time with this. You're no fun if you drop it down and have to find it. That being said though, we'll go ahead and take our ring terminal, and since this wire runs back to our 7-way, you want to put this on the silver post. It's labeled auxiliary. Go ahead and slide that on. Take our nut, get that started. Then I can come back with a 3/8 socket and snug it down. You don't have to crank down on these by any means. Just want to make sure it's seated and snug. Now for this post, what you can do is take the leftover wire that we had trimmed off of this when we cut it to length, and you're going to crimp on, again, a small ring terminal on one end. We're going to crimp on a large ring terminal on the other end. We'll take the small ring terminal, slide that over the copper colored post labeled battery, take our nut, and we'll get this started. And then we'll come back again with our socket and snug it down. The other end of this wire here that we crimped on the large ring terminal, that's going to have to get connected to a power supply or battery voltage. So if you open up our fuse panel here, we're going to have a stud here that has power. So we're going to remove that nut using a 13mm socket. And carefully remove that. You can take our ring terminal, go ahead and slide that over the stud, and we're just going to tighten our nut back down. Now we can go ahead and test everything to make sure that it's working properly. I'm using this tester you can find here at eTrailer. So you can see we have our 12-volt power supply running back. We can turn on our tail lights, hit our brakes, try our left turn, and our right turn. And since our kit gives us this 4-way flat connector, it's a good idea just to check that as well. So we have on our left turn, our right turn, our brakes, and our running lights. And that's going to finish up our look at and our installation of the ETBCL kit on our 2020 Ford Transit T250.